Hi everyone. So in this video I will show you how you can use DynamoDB with Lambda function. So we will use the Lambda function to perform different operations on the DynamoDB table, like creating data or reading data, updating data. All those functionalities we will perform on the DynamoDB table using Lambda function. So let's see how it works. Okay, so here we have a diagram. So here we have a DynamoDB table. On the right side you can see this is a DynamoDB table. So first of all you have to create a table in the DynamoDB, and then you can store whatever data you want. And after you have stored the data, then we will create a Lambda function, and that Lambda function will interact with the DynamoDB table. So in that Lambda function we will write the code. So we can write different code, like suppose you want to insert a record in the DynamoDB table. So for that you can write the code, or you want to delete the record, you want to see all the records. So for that also you can write Lambda function code. Now how we will invoke the Lambda function? So that is the case. So this thing we will do using the API gateway. So basically we will tie the Lambda function along with the API gateway. So basically we will tie the Lambda function with an API endpoint. Now our users will send the request to the API endpoint, and that in turn will call the Lambda function, and Lambda function will invoke, like Lambda function will interact with the DynamoDB table, and it will perform the necessary action. So this is the overall view. So the client interacts with the HTTP API, and then the HTTP API invokes that Lambda function, and that Lambda function will interact with the DynamoDB table and perform the necessary actions like fetching the data, or updating the data, or deleting data, all those things. Yeah, and as you can see, like the Lambda function is sending request to the DynamoDB table, and DynamoDB table is sending a response, and again the Lambda function is transferring that response to HTTP API, and then HTTP API is sending the response to the client. So basically client sends a request to the HTTP API, and then it goes to the Lambda function and then DynamoDB table, and from that the response comes back to the client. So suppose the client wants to fetch some data, so it sends some request to the HTTP API endpoint, and then the client gets back the response, and in the response it has all the data, like whatever the data that client has requested us to do. So that is for the theoretical part. So now I will take you to my computer screen and I will show you how you can do that. Okay, so the first step is like so now I am in my AWS console page. So log into the AWS console page, and now first of all we have to create a DynamoDB table. So for that I can search for DynamoDB here, and you can create a DynamoDB table. So you can see on the left side we have some menu bars, so you can click on the tables, and it shows that right now we have not created any table. So you can easily create a DynamoDB table. So first thing is you can create a DynamoDB table by clicking on that create table button. So click on that, and you can give the name of the table anything. So I will just give it like order details. And this is the important part. So it is asking for a partition key and the sort key. So one thing I want to say is like you must be thinking like we know that in case of relational databases we use something called as the primary key. So the primary key is basically an unique, so it will be unique for all the records in the database, and using that primary key itself we can fetch any of the record. So in DynamoDB database also, like the partition key and the sort key, both of them comprises the primary key. Okay, so here the sort key is optional, but the partition key is mandatory. So the thing is like if the partition key is unique enough, like if the partition key itself is unique enough so that it can fetch all the records, so in that case we don't need the sort key. Okay, but suppose the partition key is not unique enough. Okay, so suppose it's not unique enough, like so for us so suppose that I have given the partition key as order ID, but suppose order ID is not unique enough. Maybe for a single order ID you might have more than one record. So in that case you need a sort key, so that the combination of the partition key and sort key, the combination becomes an unique. So the partition key and sort key both makes up a unique primary key. So that is the thing you have to keep in mind. Okay, so that is the thing about the partition key and sort key. So in this case we are not using the sort key because I am using the order ID as the partition key, and the order ID will be unique enough, so it is enough only. So we don't need a sort key. But one thing to keep in mind, like if you want to use the sort key, you have to give the sort key name now only. Okay, so once the table is created, After that you cannot add a sort key. So that is the thing you have to keep in mind. So you have to specify the sort key name when you are creating the table itself. Okay, so that is the thing you have to keep in mind. So yeah, and rest of the thing I will not be changing anything, so that is fine. So yeah, we can just click on the create table and then the table will be created. So it might take some time for the table. So you can see the table is being created. So it might take some time for the table to be created. So once the table is created, then I will continue. So the table is created now. So you can click on the table name and it will open a new page, and here you can see different information about the table. Okay. So you can see different information like indexes, monitor, all these things are there. So you can explore it by yourself and you can get an idea what it is. So and there is a button called explore table items. So if you click on that, then it will show you all the records present in your table. So yeah, it is showing that the query did not return any result. That is because in our table right now we don't have any data, but if you have some data, then you can definitely, you'll be able to see them. Okay, so let's add some data. So I can go back to the previous screen, and from the there are two types of, like, you can add the data in DynamoDB table in mainly two ways. So you can add the data from GUI itself, from here itself, or you can add the data from program. Okay, so first of all, I am just adding some data. So there is a button called create item, so you can use that, and so you can enter some value. So order ID I'm putting as 1, and you can create a new row as well. So type will be string, and I will say it's a product and is jacket. Okay, fine. I'll just add another one also, so it will be also string. So address, and I'll say just London. Okay, so now you can click on the create item and the new item has been created. Okay, so now if we click on that export table count, then you can see that data. Yeah, that data is there. So you can, that way you can easily store some data in the DynamoDB table. Okay, and you can query the data also. So there is a there is a query icon, so you can click on this query button and you can choose which table you want to search the data for, and then there is a order ID. So remember that we have chosen the order ID as a partition key. So and since we have not the uses the sort key, so the partition key is supposed to be the unique, and it can fetch the data. So you can search using the order ID. So I can click on, suppose only one record is there, so I'll just give the one here and run, then it will search that data. So I'll just add some more records also in that. So I have added 2 records, you can see. Yeah, so now we can search by the order ID. So if we just click on 2 then run, so only that item is returned. So this is a easier way to search the data using so AWS provide you a GUI to search data to, like, the, usually you can easily query the data. You don't need to know the syntax. Okay, so just using the GUI itself you can easily search the data. And there is a button called scan also. You can, so when you want to see all the data, then you can use the scan. So we just run that, and yeah, that is a scan. So that is actually written all the data of the table. And there is a filter button also, so you can apply some filter condition here. So suppose we want to fetch the product where it is served. So I'll just give it his here product, and type is okay, fine, and that is called sort. If you just click on run, then yeah, it will fetch that sort item. So this is a very powerful tool. Using that you can easily search the data. One thing I forgot to add here is that the DynamoDB table, so make sure that you are in the correct region. Okay, so you can see that right now I am in the Mumbai location, so I have already created a table, order details. So the table will be visible from the Mumbai location only. Okay, so if I just switch back to different location, suppose Ohio, So in that case I will not be able to, so you can see, yeah, so I will not be able to see that table. Okay, so make sure, so just in case you are not able to see the table, so just make sure that you are in the correct region. So let me switch back to the Mumbai location, and now the tables comes back. Yeah, so that, just keep in mind that, like, make sure that you are in the correct region so that you can see the table. What is that? So now we have already created DynamoDB table. So now we will create a Lambda function so that it can interact with the DynamoDB table. But before that, so just wanted to add, like, uh, so whatever IAM user that you are using, so that user should have access to, like, the DynamoDB full access, and it should have the Lambda full access as well. So let me go to the IAM and click on the user. And if you see the permissions, so there are two permissions that is needed. So that is the, yeah, this one, Amazon DynamoDB full access, that permission is needed, and this one also, that one, the AWS Lambda full access. So that these two things are required so that you can the Lambda function can use the DynamoDB, and this is also needed actually. So that one, that AWS Lambda invocation DB, so the Lambda function can invoke the DynamoDB. So these are the permissions that you needed here. So let me go back to the Lambda. So I'll just create a new Lambda function here. So I can create a new Lambda function. So you can give it any name. I'll choose Node.js as a programming language, but you can choose any other language also. You can use Python, Ruby, or Go, whatever it is. I'll choose Node.js. And this is the important thing. Yeah. So in this case, there is called, like, change default execution role. Okay. So that is, so here what we have to do, like, here we need to give the Lambda function permission to invoke the DynamoDB. So the Lambda function needs permission so that it can invoke the DynamoDB. So you have to give that permission. So I'll choose the third option, create a new role from AWS policy template. So there is already template present in AWS, so we'll just use that. So I can give it, like, you can give it any other name also. So, and in the policy template you have to give some name. So that is yeah, so this is the thing that you have to check, simple microservices permission. So you can search for that and make sure that it is clicked. Okay, so after that, in advanced setting we will not do anything, and now we can click on the create function to create the Lambda function. So just make sure that here you are checking these simple microservices permissions, because using this we are giving the permission to the Lambda function so that it can interact with the DynamoDB. Just create on the create function button, and okay, it is saying read from DynamoDB. Okay, it looks like the name is already present, so I'll just give it another name. So yeah, you can just give another name like that. So I'm just giving this name. So click on the create function, and it will create a function. So it will take some time, and then the function will be created. Okay, so now our our Lambda function is created. So it has given some boilerplate code, so we'll just modify that. So you can write the code here also, but this editor is not that good to write code, because whenever your code gets really long, so it will be very difficult to manage it here. So it's better if you use some other code editor. So I will be using the VS Code for that. So let me go back to my VS Code terminal. So let me go to, yeah, so I have in my VS Code now. So I have created a file called fetch item. So let me start writing the code. So here we will be using something called as AWS SDK. So AWS SDK, it's like a package that is provided us by the AWS. So using that you can perform different things. So you can basically interact with the AWS services using the programming language. So you can see, so this is a tool to build on AWS. So if there is different languages, so you can open the AWS documentation and you can see. So here I am using JavaScript. So if you open the AWS SDK, so you can see there are different options like there, Node.js, JavaScript. So if you open any of that, so it will just show you how you can use the AWS SDK using you can use it in your Node.js application. Okay, so it has some applications, so it has some example as well. So this is very useful for that. So you can go through that and you will get some idea about that. So in this case we will be using that AWS SDK to interact with the DynamoDB. So first of all, we have to import that AWS SDK. So we have imported that, and now we have to specify the location. So in the config we have to specify in which location we are trying to use the resource. So in this case our DynamoDB table is in the Mumbai location, so we'll just specify the location here. So you can see the location, yeah, it is Mumbai. If you click on that, AP South 1, so that is your location, so you have to just specify it there. So we'll just write it AP South 1. So we have done that. So now, so in this case we will be using something called as document client. So that is basically an object that is provided us by the AWS SDK. So we'll just create an instance from that object. So I'll just give it name as DynamoDB, and so this is very useful actually. So we'll be using the aws.dynamodb.documentClient. So we will be using that to interact with the DynamoDB. So now, so basically document client is basically an abstraction over the aws.dynamodb. Okay, so you can use the aws.dynamodb as well to interact with the DynamoDB database, but the thing is document client is that it makes the syntax look easy. So when you use document client, so when your use case is like searching data, is simple rather, like searching, updating, deleting, all those things, for that you can use the document client. But if you want to do some more thing, like you want to create a table, so that is not possible using document client. So for that you have to use the aws.dynamodb. But since we are just searching the data, we will be using the document client because it makes the code look easy. Okay, so yeah, so now we'll just copy some boilerplate code. So this is the boilerplate code that we'll be copying, paste it here. We'll just remove this part and we'll just modify it according to our case. Just write the try catch block. So inside that, so we'll be using a function called dynamodb.get. So inside the dynamodb.get method, we'll be passing all the information like the table name. So you have to write the table name here. In this case the table name is this, and you have to pass the key also. So this key is basically the primary key. Okay, so you remember that in this case, in our case, if you open the DynamoDB table, so yeah, you can see partition key. So in this case partition key and sort key. So in this case partition key is order ID, so we'll just give it here. So here you have to basically provide the name of that, provide the partition key of the record which you want to fetch. So in this case, since our primary key is only consists of partition key, so we'll just only specify the partition key. But if it has sort key, then you have to give that as well here. But since in our case it does not have the sort key, so we'll just have the partition key. So we'll just give the partition key here. And as you see that in this case the partition key is order ID, so we'll just write it here. So you can write order ID. So now you have to specify what value you want to search. So in this case we don't have much value. If you just go inside the table, explore table items, you have only 2 records. Suppose you want to fetch the record 1. Okay, so what the order ID is 1. So we have to just put the value here. So in this case I am just hard coding the value, but in your case you can dynamically pass the value also. Okay, so that is done. So that is actually create a promise, and we'll just await that promise and we'll get the data. So it will create a promise, and so we'll just await the promise. So that data will be stored in this data variable, and we'll just return that. And just in case there is some error, you can just return the error as well. Okay, so now our code is written. So just an overview, like you have to import the AWS SDK, specify the location, and they'll create a new object from the document client. So after that you have to use the dynamodb.get function. Inside that you have to specify the table name and the key of the record which you want to fetch. So in this case we have provided order ID 1, and then you can return that data and you can handle the error as well. So just copy entire the code here, go to the DynamoDB, go to the Lambda actually. So we'll just copy the paste the code here. Yeah, so we have pasted the code here. So yeah, now we have to deploy it as well. Okay, so make sure you click on the deploy. So our function is deployed. Yeah, it is fine. So now the next thing is that we want to invoke that Lambda function. So how do you do that? So for that the next step is like we will tie that Lambda function along with the API gateway. So basically API endpoint. So now when we send request to that endpoint, then this Lambda function will be triggered and it will interact with DynamoDB and it will fetch that data. This specific data it will fetch and it will return us. Okay, so now just go back to the API gateway and let's just create a new API gateway. Create API. I'll just create a REST API here. So yeah, I'm giving the name as test API. I've given the name as test YouTube. Okay, so description you can give anything. Just I'm not giving anything, so just create API, and it is done. So now we have to create a method, create a resource first. Okay, so let me create a resource. I'll just say demo data. You can give any resource you want. Okay, so we have given this data, and now you can click on the create resource. So now in this we will create a method. So we will be creating a get method, and we will be the integration type will be Lambda function, because we want to tie this API gateway in the Lambda function. So this thing, so basically as I said in my previous video as well, so in this case, in our use case, so if you open the, just let me open the AWS management console, go to the Lambda function, demo YouTube, and you can see there is a variable called event. So in this case we are not really using that event object. Okay, so that is where event object is being used. So when you are passing, so when you are basically sending some request and you are sending some data along with that request. Now here in the so here in the Lambda function, if you want to get that data from that request body, so for that we use the event object. But now in our case we have just simply hard coded that data, which is not recommended. So in that case it's not needed, actually that event object, it's not needed. So that's the reason we don't need to click this checkbox. But just in case you need to parse the data, you want to fetch that data, like you have to see what data we have sent with the request. So for that you have to use it. So I am just keeping it. So we'll just give the name of the Lambda function here. Yeah, it's demo YouTube, and click on save. So it's basically asking that, yes, we are ready to give the permission to the Lambda function, give the permission to the API gateway to invoke the Lambda function. Okay, so that is done. So now thing is you have to deploy the API. So you can give it any stage name. So you can give it dev. You can give it any name you want. Okay, so now to get that URL, so you have to click on the stage. So you have to expand that, and then you have to click on get. So this is the URL. Okay, so this is the URL where the users will be sending request, and when the request is sent in this URL, it will trigger the Lambda function, and Lambda function will fetch the data from the DynamoDB and return us. Okay, so you can just copy this URL. So you can just paste it here and it should work. Okay, so actually getting an error. Okay, it is saying the provided key element does not match the schema. Okay, so if you open the table, actually, let me open the table actually. So DynamoDB. If you open the table, so this is a partition. Okay, so here it is, the error is because, so you can see it is saying the provided key element does not match the schema. That means here the key that you are providing, so that does not provide with the, that does not match with the schema actually. So that is because in this case we have provided order ID as 1, that is a number actually. But if you open the table, you can see partition key order ID, that is a string actually. So you have to provide it as string format, not in a number format. So we'll just provide in a string format, and now it should work. So since now we have made the changes, we have to redeploy the Lambda function once again. So yeah, it is redeployed again. Now you can use this function, it should work now. So you can click on refresh, and yeah, now it works. Okay, so now it is working, and it is fetching out the all the details like product, address, and order ID. So this is how you can, this is the code. So this is how you can fetch the data from the DynamoDB table using the Lambda function. So in this case we have used the basically we have hard coded the value, but it's better to send the order ID in the request. Okay, so if you send the order ID in the request, it will be available in the event object, and from that you can pass that order ID here. So in that case you can dynamically fetch the data. Okay, so yeah, and if you want to fetch the data, so that is, so basically this is the endpoint. So you can, suppose you have if you want to send a request from the React front end, that is also possible. You can just send the request to that this URL endpoint, and it will fetch you the data. Okay, so you can also test it out using some of the API tools like Postman. So I'll just open the Postman here, and I'll use this URL to send data from here to Postman. So I have just opened the Postman here. Let me copy the URL first. Copy the element. So I'll just add a new request, and you can give any name if you want, doesn't matter. So it is get request, paste the URL here, and now send. Yeah, now you are getting the data. Okay, so this is how you can get the data. So as I already said that in this case we have just hard coded the value. So we have just hard coded the order ID here, but it's better to get this value from the event object and pass it here, so that you can dynamically pass the data. So the previous example was of to fetch a specific item, but suppose you want to fetch all of the item from the DynamoDB table. So for that we can use a function called DynamoDB.scan. Okay, so you can see DynamoDB.scan, we have written DynamoDB.scan, and then you have to just write the table name. You don't need to write the key name, anything, just provide the table name, and inside the DynamoDB.scan method just provide the table name and you will get the data. So this is how you can just modify the code. So I will just modify the code. So I have just modified the same Lambda function only. So just made the changes and click on deploy. So it is being deployed. So once it is deployed, so yeah, it is done. So you can click on the API gateway to get the URL test YouTube, that is the API endpoint that we have created. So click on stages and then you can click on get, and this is the URL that we are getting. So if you just copy this URL and send the request from Postman, and then if you try to send the request, now it should fetch all the data. Yeah, that is there. So you can see it is sending us all the data. So this is how you can fetch all the data from the DynamoDB table. Okay, so yeah, just make sure that you are changing. So just open the Lambda function once. Yeah, so basically you have to just provide that DynamoDB.scan method, DynamoDB.scan, and inside that you have to just provide the table name, and then you will be able to fetch all the data from the DynamoDB table. From DynoBase, so they have some example how to use the DynamoDB document client. So this is a really useful blog, because here you are getting example from all of the operations that you want to perform the database. So like you want to list all the tables, you want to put item, that means you want to create a new item, you want to delete any item or all the items, update an item, everything you can do. So I think it is really good because it has all the examples. Okay, so how you can use like that. So suppose just a second. So suppose put an item, how to create an item. So yeah, that is the code. So it has written the code here. So you can use the DynamoDB.put method, and you can create the item, and then you have to give the names of the columns names, and then give the name of the table. That simple it is. So I think this blog is really useful. So I'll just put this link to this blog in the description, so you can take a look at it, and you can definitely get an idea how to perform certain actions in your applications. So yeah, that's all for today. So I think this tutorial helped you how to use DynamoDB along with the Lambda function. So if you have any doubt, or if you have any suggestions, any questions, then you can definitely put them in the comment box, and I'll try my best to answer the questions. Thank you.